It's interesting, Dr. Henry, one of our colleagues perhaps started asking you this question through you, Chair. Dr. Henry, you've said multiple times in the media that diversion is happening. Is that true?
They are prescription pills meant to help deal with BC's deadly toxic drug crisis. But police say an alarming number of safer supply drugs are ending up for sale illegally on the streets.
We have to recognize that this is a symptom of unmet needs. And we know that there are many different types of people sharing their drugs with others who don't have access to systems. And so we have heard that this has happened. It's happened before. We had our
thanks for that,
program,
Dr. Henry.
And it
thanks very much.
Happen.
So diversion is happening. We know that. The question is, the leading cause of death in children 10 to 18 in British Columbia is, could you remind the panel what that is?
It's the toxic drugs that are on the street right now.
It's overdose, is it not, Dr. Henry?
It's the toxic drugs that are on the street right now.
So you can tell this panel equivocally that no so-called safe supply is part of the overdose deaths in 10 to 18-year-olds in your province.
Well, you will have known that the chief coroner just put out a report on that this week. And while hydromorphone, which comes from a variety of different sources, was there in a small percentage of young people who died, it was not the sole substance found.
Denise Fensky says her daughter, Amelie North, began experimenting with drugs at age 14. She started with Dilaudid, known on the street as Dillies. Dilaudid is the brand name for hydromorphone, the opioid that's prescribed to drug users as an alternative to deadly street drugs. Amelie is now 17, and Fensky says she's in treatment for addiction to fentanyl. Her friend, Camila Sword, was killed by illicit drugs in 2022. She was 14 years old. The girls' families are now suing the BC government and Health Canada. They allege the province has been negligent in its safe supply program, failing to warn people about the risk of prescription opioids. Fensky says her daughter's story illustrates the risk of diversion when hydromorphone pills are sold on the street, often to young people at rock-bottom prices.
And was not the cause of death. The cause and the challenge.
Thanks for that, Dr. Henry. The big thing. Excuse me, Dr. Henry. What we do know is that hydromorphone has been found in 10 to 18-year-olds who have died in your province due to overdose. That's disturbing to me. I don't think that I asked you a question, Dr. Henry. Dr. Henry, excuse me. This is my time to ask you questions, so please, if you would be respectful of that and answer the questions, that would be incredibly helpful. When we talk about legalization, has the import and supply of heroin ever been allowed in Canada?
I'm not sure what the question is. Are we talking about legalization?
Well, we probably should be, because I believe in your statement, ma'am, you've said what we're doing with legalization around cannabis, etc. You also talked about monitoring safety of the product. So in the long term, that would be a way to counter the toxic street drugs and take away business from organized crime. Absolutely. So it would appear from that, ma'am, that you are a supporter of legalization. Is that true?
I think what has got us into the situation that we're in is prohibition, and we've seen that in many different situations over time. So we saw that with alcohol prohibition, we see this with cannabis, and I think legalization and regulation minimizes harms.
So you would be a supporter of legalization of hard drugs such as opium, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine?
I don't think the term hard drugs is a term that
I don't think that I asked you that, ma'am. What I asked you is, would you be a supporter of legalization of hard drugs such as methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and opium? Would you support that?
I believe that legalization and prohibition is the cause of the issue. So legalization and regulation minimizes harms of all drugs.
Do you think that decriminalization has been a success in British Columbia so far?
I think parts of it certainly have. With any change in policy that's like this, there are always unintended issues that come up, and we need to be pragmatic and address those.
So you think that having a record number of overdose deaths in the first year of a pilot project and having a premier beg the federal government to eliminate public drug use because it's been such a failure and people having to climb over needles to get to children's playgrounds is a success?
I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about.
Is that a yes or no, Dr. Henry? You're being very obtuse in your answer.
I'm not being obtuse. I'm being truthful in what I believe, which is that prohibition is one of the
So
causes
the question
that has
is,
led
Dr.
to
Henry, is would
the
you support
crisis that we're
legalization?
in.
I'll ask you
I
the
do
third time.
I support legalization and regulation
Thank
of
you.
drugs to minimize harms.
Do you know of the business called Fair Price Pharma that exists in your province?
I know of it.
And do you know that Fair Price Pharma arranged for the importation of 15 kilograms of heroin into Canada?
That would be under the Health Canada regulations.
I didn't ask you about the regulations. I asked you if you knew that they imported 15 kilograms of heroin.
No, I did not.
Thank you. Do you know a person named Perry Kendall?
Of course I do. Perry Kendall was the provincial health officer in British Columbia.
And have you ever met with Mr. Kendall?
I meet with him regularly.
And is it true that he is the founder of Fair Price Pharma?
That's not correct.
Thank you very much, Chair. And back to you, Dr. Henry. Dr. Perry Kendall, he was BC's public health officer before you, 99 to 2018. Is that true?
He was the provincial health officer. That's correct.
And you seem to have some trouble with this, but the Vancouver Sun reported that in 2020, after retiring as the public health officer, he co-founded Fair Price Pharma. Is that true or is that not true?
He was involved with it. I don't know his exact nature. He was involved with it. He is no longer involved with it.
Right. I'm sorry, what did you just say?
As far as I am aware, he is no longer involved.
He was one of the co-founders of this company that imported 15 kilograms of heroin into Canada. That is not correct. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Does he have any relation with Fair Price Pharma?
Not that I'm aware of right now.
Has he had in the past?
He has had in the past, I believe.
And so he was an official in your government, not that you're the premier there,
not
but he
in
was an
government.
official in your government, and now he runs a company which has imported heroin into Canada. Is that true?
No, that's not correct.
You know, he was the co-founder of a company that imported 15 kilograms of heroin into this country. And the answer, of course, is yes. Do you know a Dr. Mark Tyndall?
I do know Mark Tyndall.
And is it true that he's the former executive medical director of the British Columbia Centre for Disease Control
That's correct.
and former deputy provincial health officer under Dr. Kendall? Is that true?
That's correct.
And he started a company called My Safe Society. Is that true?
I don't remember the name of it. It could be.
Okay, well, let's say it this way then. He started a company was to supply so-called safe supply hydromorphone from vending machines. Is that true?
From biometric machines, I believe so, yes.
Fair enough. Dr. Henry, to me it's very concerning that many individuals who were former officials of the British Columbia government, and indeed people have occupied your position, are now involved with distributing, selling, and dealing drugs such as meth, cocaine, heroin, etc., and profiting from it. Is that okay with you?
I don't. I think what you have to do is separate between legal use, and that is under the purview of Health Canada.
Supporting these individuals, they did your job, and you're actually saying, hey, we should legalize more drugs in Canada. That's your pitch to Canadians. And oddly enough, these individuals are actually profiting from it. To me, that convinces me there's a significant conflict of interest here, Dr. Henry.